So we all know we live in a world of order and chaos, but not many people understand what that really means. So for me, what this means is there's potential. There's all these things that can happen, all these things that we can create and go and do. And this is very much part of why I love fitness. So the fitness part that I enjoy the most is the idea that I can take something and add to it or take away from it. So I know, I think the better way to describe this is to imagine going on a trip. In my case, I usually do backcountry snowboarding, loved it. What I loved the most about it was being able to pick your pack, figure out what you needed, what you're willing to carry up that mountain, and what you weren't. And that was so empowering to me. It was so amazing because I was going to embrace chaos. I was going out into this environment that's not hospitable to people. It was, in all essence, if I didn't take the right gear, I could very easily die. And I enjoyed that challenge. I enjoyed the challenge of being able to take my gear, pare it down to the bare minimum, deciding is that worth carrying for 6 hours of hiking or not up a mountain in snow, and then realizing that this is important, that isn't important, and that ability to be able to identify something, to put in a certain order, judge it, and then put it in an order is super empowering. And I believe it's godlike attribute. The desire to be able to identify things, to be able to judge them, and to be able to order them is a very godlike attribute. This comes across in Genesis. In Genesis, we know that God created the world, right? I mean, how did he do it? First, he looked out and he thought to himself, there's nothing out there, so I'm going to create something. And he separates the light from the darkness. He identifies the light, he identifies the darkness, and he starts there. And he says, the light is good, the darkness is without form. And then he goes on and identifies something else. And he creates the heaven and the earth. And he keeps doing this on and on and on until he subdivides everything down and identifies, judges, and orders things all the way down to the animal kingdom. And eventually adding Adam and Eve onto that. So when I go and train myself or somebody else, what I'm thinking about is what is best for them. I need to identify, judge, and order what they are wanting or needing in that moment. And even for myself, when you're out there training, every repetition is a chance for you to identify, judge, and order. We do this all the time. Like, what did you wear today? Why did you wear that versus something else? Because you identified that was good for today. You identified it as something you can wear, first of all. Then you judged it and saying that would be good for today versus the other options that I had. And the criteria can change based on a lot of different things, but you did do that process, and then you ordered it. You actually put it on your body in a certain way. You can't put it on upside down. It doesn't work. You can't put it on backwards. Well, you could, but it look odd, right? So these things you do every single day, whether you mean to or not, your body will do it automatically. When we go to train, we're actually telling our body how to order things. So when you eat, for example, super simple. If I drink a glass of water, I will drink a glass of water. I have to drink it a certain way, in a certain pattern, and if I don't, bad things happen. I'll choke on it, right? I'll aspirate the fluid, whatever that may be. So this happens automatically, whether we choose to or not. It's a ritual we have to follow. So that being the case, when we go to train, training actually is a way of us guiding that ritual. What is our body doing? We're giving it something and we want it to respond a certain way. And as we interact with this more and more, we realize that we have a lot of control over how that happens. We have to learn the process. We have to learn what the ritual is. And then once we learn the ritual for our body, then we have to execute on the ritual. Now, the rituals are general principles that everybody can use to guide. Like, for example, you can lift a weight and you can get stronger. Your muscles will respond to that. Okay? They will feel the stress. They will mechanically change. And when you're doing this, there's so many different factors involved, and we can identify, judge, and order these things as well. You have a neurological response. The neurological response is the ability of the brain and the spinal cord to fire and cause the muscle to contract. All right? The second part is the mechanical tension that's on that muscle. You have mechanical tension where the muscle is actually physically feeling that load and the tension of the load, and that creates another stimulus for the body to be able to adapt. The third, and that is basically metabolic stress. So if you metabolically stress a muscle, if you create a hypoxic environment where you're contracting the muscle to the point you start getting a pump, it's like engorging the muscle with blood, but the blood can't leave. So you're actually creating a hypoxic framework for this muscle to be in, and that creates another kind of stress, which also causes growth. Now, each one of these three are valuable, and depending on what your goal is, you have to identify your goal, you have to judge your goal, and you have to order your goal, and then you have to be able to go back and decide which one of these is most important for me to try and elicit, and then how am I going to actually do that effectively. So, in essence, training is also about fatigue management. So we know we all get tired, right? We all have to be able to have, someone will ask you, what's better? Should I do this or this? Well, that really depends on the circumstances. That's like saying, is it better if I'm awake or I'm asleep? Well, you need both, because if you don't have both, you're going to die. Okay? If you're asleep all the time, there's no point in living. If you're awake all the time, you're going to die. All right? So you need both. So that's easy enough. But if you look at other things where you have 1,000 different exercises, 1,000 different ways of doing something, which one is the best? And it usually comes down to something simple. You have to identify first, what is my bottleneck? What's the one thing that's holding me back from doing the thing that I want to do? And then you find that thing and you say, okay, now that I know what that bottleneck is, what tools that pares down that thousand objects or 1,000 things you could do into just a few things. And say, of these things, like for example, I want to jump higher. So I could go out and I can swim to jump higher. And you automatically know that's not a good idea. That's not going to work out. How is swimming going to make me jump higher? Because it's not working any of the muscles or any of the movement patterns that would be associated with that ritual or that pattern. So then you decide, okay, now if that's the case, then what would be? A squat. That would be great. Why would it be great? It'd be great because I'd be able to generate more force. If I can generate more force, my body will feel generally lighter, and it'd be easier for me to perform that ritual. Okay, good. Now you're onto something. Now you think to yourself, what else would I need? All right. Well, if you do it in a way that stimulates the nervous system, now the nervous system is going to be able to be more active, fire more motor neurons to be able to recruit more muscle for you to be able to actually do the jump. All right. So that's different. Training for neurological stuff is a very low repetition activity, usually 3 to 5 reps at the most. Anything else it starts getting into more of muscular tension and metabolic state. Okay, so bodybuilders like to be between 8 and 12 because that's really the sweet spot between muscle tension and muscle tension and metabolic stress. Okay, you can go higher, you can go lower, but for most part, that's the sweet spot, and that's why they usually choose that 8 to 12. Okay, now. You'll get all these other things. We know polymetrics are good. Why are polymetrics good? Because ground contact time matters. For example, if you're walking, your ground contact time is fairly long. If you start to do an easy jog, your ground contact time decreases quite a bit. Now, what happens when you start sprinting? That ground contact time gets shorter and shorter and shorter. The faster and faster you sprint, the less and less ground contact time you have. Now, why is that important? Because jumping is all about producing the minimal amount of ground contact time with the maximum amount of force. And that creates propulsion. Okay? We've just identified, we judged, and ordered these things. Now, in doing so, now you have something you can actually act on. You have some goal or some understanding of what you need, some understanding of what produces what you need, and then you have a way of ordering those things. Does that make sense? Okay. So, if this helps you, let me know. I'd like to be able to share more. Put in the comments down below if you have any questions, and I'll see you next time.